Well, in normal times, it was adults, especially parents, who would be directing children and instructing them on what's right, what's wrong. But in public schools these days, we're increasingly being told that children, by the way, whose brains are still developing till about the age of 25, should be the ones calling all the shots. Take, for instance, in St. Paul, Minnesota. In the state's largest school district, their gender inclusion policy now requires that every teacher address students by their preferred name and pronoun. The district policy also expects staff to address students by their preferred pronouns regardless of parental consent, meaning they don't have to tell their parents, and they're certainly not going to tell the parent. Well, here to react to this is Meg Kilgannon, Senior Fellow for Education Studies here at the Family Research Council. Meg, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
Well, like I mentioned, the district policy expects staff to address students by their preferred pronouns and name upon written or oral request from a student, and it does not require the parent's consent. Your reaction to that?
Well, I wish I could say that I was shocked, but I am not. This is sadly the state of affairs in many school districts. I think what I did find surprising about this, though, was when I went back and looked at the original documentation for the gender plan that they were using, it's dated July of 2015, and it's been updated several times since that time. And this goes to show you that this project of separating children from their parents is a long-standing one. It goes way past 2015. But this iteration of it and the idea of the concept of gender is just the latest version that we're seeing.
This disrespect, disregard, whatever you want to call it, for parents is deeply rooted in government education. I mean, I talked about this at the top of the program. A teacher in Arizona recently helped the cause, I think, of parental rights with her testimony before the Arizona legislature against a bill that would have allowed parents the ability, and it did pass the committee, it's not all the way through yet, but it allows parents to speak about books that their children will be exposed to in the schools funded by their tax dollars.
Right. This teacher who was speaking is such a great example of the kind of mentality that permeates education, and particularly schools of higher education. And her emphasis on the fact that she has a master's degree and so she knows best. This is just a classic kind of attitude that greets parents when they try to engage school boards.
Let me play this clip again in case people didn't catch it at the top of the program. Clip number 7.
I have a master's degree because when I got certified, I was told I had to have a master's degree to be an Arizona certified teacher. We all have advanced degrees. What do the parents have? Are we vetting the backgrounds of our parents? Are we allowing the parents to choose the curriculum and the books that our children are going to read? I think that it's a mistake.
She obviously is a graduate of the former governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe's School of Government, where he said parents have no right to speak into what their children are being taught.
Well, and she believes that rights come from the state or someone who grants them to you and not from God Almighty, right? I mean, I did not get permission from anybody to marry my husband and be blessed with the 4 children that we're blessed with, and that's not how it works. Our rights, no one needs to vet parents. It's only in very rare cases of serious abuse where any sort of government intervention is necessary. But
that arrogance is unbelievable. I mean, they have their talons in our children, and they won't let them go. But I am so grateful that we have seen, since COVID in particular, these mama bears who are responding and going after these buzzards who have their claws in our children.
Right. There was a great case in Georgia where a mama bear group had their court expenses paid by Forsyth County Public Schools when they were not allowed to participate in public comment for the very same kind of issue that this teacher is talking about, is that someone with a master's degree can allow pornography to be shown with children, and when parents object to it, we are considered ignorant and not qualified to make a comment on that state of affairs. And I think everyone's
Meg,
going to be surprised when these things are turned around.
let me ask you about that, Meg, because is this in part, I mean, this is so blatant. I mean, I have a master's degree. Who's vetted these parents? Who are they to tell us what we're to teach their children? I mean, are they desperate? I mean, are they being threatened by the advance of parents, and so now they're just kind of losing it?
I think it's an interesting mix of two things. One is the pressure that's put on them when they have to justify what they think, because there's not really much discussion about these topics at the policy-making level inside the schools. They're in an information bubble, and they don't realize that they are. They have one kind of thinking that's informing the zeitgeist of public education, as it were. And parents generally think that their kids are having basically the same experience that we had when we were in school, and that is simply no longer the case. Now that parents are confronted with that reality and they're pushing back against these crazy ideologies, the teachers are shocked, and they're struggling for some kind of foothold to defend these ideologies, and they're not going to be able to do it.
And they're being exposed, and all of their radicalism. Meg Kilgannon, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Tony.